When we talk about migration, the most heard causes are due to war, religion, socioeconomic conditions of the country of origin. In this video, the case of the Filipino overseas workers who were forced to migrate to Italy with the hope of a better life for their families who remained in the country is analyzed. The Filipino community represents one of the first foreign populations to enter Italy during the past century. The first flaws date back to the early 1970s due to the harsh economic and financial crisis over time that hit the country after World War II. Following the establishment of Ferdinand Marcos regime in December 1965, the Philippines witnessed a long period of international tensions that accompanied major economic development, which was unable to keep up with the pace of rapid population growth. Added to this was the 1973 energy crisis, which favored the ratification of the Labor Code of the Philippines, that effectively recognized immigration of young men and women workers as a solution to the country's internal economic problems. The first arrivals of Filipino migrants to Italy were characterized by a greater presence of the female gender, which was encouraged by specific international agreements between Italy and the Philippines, aimed at regulating the entry of domestic workers and domestic helpers. Over the years, the number of Filipino migrants grew significantly, so much so by the late 1980s they occupied a key role within the national labor market. As the year passed, the Filipino community became more familiar with the stable in the country. In fact, they began to move out of their employers' homes, creating pathways of cohabitation among compatriots, friends, and relatives. But what is the role of the cultural mediator? Italy is a country that welcomes thousands of migrants every day, but many years ago, even Italians themselves had to leave their homeland to find a better living condition elsewhere. The migration of Italians stops during the post-war period when, entering the phase of industrialization, it became one of the world's major industrial powers. In this context, the need to understand and value the peculiarities of the new multicultural society arises and develops, which is followed by the first mediation operations. In fact, the figure of an intercultural mediator becomes essential to create a bridge between different communities living in the same cultural, political, and economical circumstances. The intercultural mediator is a competent professional who acts as a bridge between immigrants and the territorial and social context in which they live and work. The intercultural mediator intervenes in the following activities: language mediation, accompaniment in the individual paths, facilitation of exchange between immigrant citizens and services and institutions. It also analyzes the needs and resources of an individual user or group and orients and designs initiatives and tools that help integration. The functions of mediation are multiple: translation, interpersonal communication considering cultural, ethnic, religious differences. They know how to listen and to be empathetic, and they recognize valuing differences. What, on the other hand, is the role of an interpreter in this context? We find the figure of an interpreter in different contexts in which the migrant is involved. For example, in the judicial context, when during the trial, the migrant relies on an interpreter who can best express his reason. In the medical context, the figure of interpreter is extremely important as the foreign patient needs to best explain his or her pathological condition, or in case he or she finds himself in the ER, the symptoms he or she has in order to act promptly. The interpreter comes into play as the migrant begins to integrate with the society of the host country. The interpreter is not merely a medium of conductor, but it is a communicator with a responsibility to those who hear him in the target language. His task, therefore, is to achieve the same goals as the speaker in the target language. Thanks to these two figures, the migrant foreigner does not feel excluded in the new cultural context in which he finds himself, and thus takes less time to integrate with the host society.